Hello again and welcome back to our mini-series on playing bass in worship. In this video we'll be looking at note attack and length. Check out the first video if you haven't already, as it frames and underpins everything that we'll be looking at in this mini-series. Let's first talk about playing against the string. You can play bass both by plucking with your finger and by using a pick. And both can create very unique sounds. With a pick, you can add a strong attack to notes, as well as produce a brighter tone and harsher tone. It sounds awesome when you get to big sections like choruses, and can help you play repeated notes faster and cleaner. When you use your fingers, it can provide more control and produces a mellower tone. I find it has much more dynamic range, and I can play really softly as well as really hard. Most people prefer one or the other, so I would encourage you in your practice at home to try out the one that you're more uncomfortable with. Now let's think about where we are plucking the string. You will find that your hand will rest in a comfortable playing position around the middle of the body. But depending on where we pluck the string can change the sound of the note. The closer to the bridge I get, the brighter a note becomes. And then the closer to the neck you come, the more mellow a note becomes. You'll be able to hear the effect that has with playing with a pick too. Let's look at this in context then. We're going to play through the pre-choruses at two different points in the song of All Hail King Jesus, and notice how I play them differently to suit what is being played around it. As you heard, the first time I played, I was playing over the neck to produce a more mellow tone, to make sure it didn't stick out amongst the sparse texture. However, when we got to the second time around and everyone else is in, I could play back in the middle of the body to give a fuller sound. Now let's think about note length. There are two things that you need to consider. It's going to be how long or short the note is going to be, and whether it would be attached or detached. That usually applies to long notes. Short notes are really great at having a strong attack and leave space when the section is really dense. Long notes help fill out a section and give a fuller sound for instruments to build upon. Short notes would fit really well in a section where you're wanting to have a very strong attack with repeated notes like building in a bridge. Have a listen to how it sounds here. Longer notes are really helpful when there isn't much else going on instrumentally, such as quiet verses and choruses, as you can hear here. When we play long notes, we need to think about when we cut them off. The two options that we have are playing them right into the next note, or end the note before playing the next. And it sounds like this. So attached would be like this. And detached would be like this. Usually, the more appropriate option is the attached version. But the detached version is useful when you want to include some space and make more impact with the front of the note. The final thing that I want to talk about is a couple of things that I've taken from my playing outside of church and I've found sometimes fits within a song. They are muting and ghost notes, and the way that I've used them is very similar to a funk or soul style. First of all, muting has to do with both the note attack as well as the sustain and duration of the note. You can mute the string in a couple of ways, either with your fretting hand or with your plucking hand. With the fretting hand, you can play a note with your index finger and then rest your fingers on top of the string to mute the rest of the sound, and it sounds like this. You can also mute by using your plucking hand, by placing the side of your hand on the strings near the bridge and plucking the string either with your thumb or with a pick, and it sounds like this. By muting the string, you get the feeling of an impactful short note, but the note is still sustaining like a long note, but just not as loud. The other technique is ghost notes, which is when you pluck the string but completely mute it. It's most easily achieved by raising your index finger after muting with your fretting hand, and on its own sounds like this. And when you play it with muted notes, it sounds a bit more like this. When I use it, it's often to lock in with what the kick is doing, which we'll look at in the next video. In the song that we've been using, I'd use it during the second verse, and it would sound something like this. These techniques are very stylized, so it makes sense to consider when you're using them and see if it serves the song. In the next video, we'll be looking at slotting in with the drummer, where we'll start to use these techniques to really gel with the rest of the band. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.